Hi guys, and welcome back to another video. So today is Monday, therefore it's another sketchbook doodles session, or I guess in this case another spread in my sketchbook. And I thought it'd be nice to kind of revisit using water-based markers in my sketchbook again, since it kind of has been a little bit since I've done one where I just mostly used kind of water-based markers. So as usual, I have done the sketch before filming, and I have done it with the Pilot Color Eno in the color of red before we can start to add some of the markers to the spread. So I know some people don't really like using water-based markers for just coloring in general, but I think it's like one of the easiest ways to add color to your sketchbook because you don't have to worry about bleed through. Usually there's like a plethora amount of colors that you can choose from. So today I am mostly going to be only using the Magic Fly markers, which are dual-ended, so they have kind of like a fine liner tip on one end and then they have a brush tip on the other end. And as you can see right here, I'm kind of swatching out my colors for today. So I am drawing March 7th from Honkai Star Rail, and she has mostly kind of like a blue, purple, pink kind of color scheme. So I was trying to find which colors I wanted to use for today's spread, since I tend to like to limit the colors just a bit. So I decided to kind of pick these three colors, except for the dark purple will become a dark blue just because I thought it would fit a little bit nicer. So kind of as like an overview shot, I'm going to be filling in the entire spread with just water-based markers and just filling in spaces as kind of like larger chunks. And then once I finish with that, we can go ahead and go in with the fine liner tip side and do basically the line work on top, which kind of helps tie everything together. So I do think sometimes water-based markers are a little bit finicky to use, and that's kind of like the reason why a lot of people don't really like using water-based markers. And I only really started using them when I got a kind of like a large pack of, I think it's the Crayola Super Tips. So it has like 100 markers and there's like a lot of colors you can pick from. But majority of the colors are mostly like dark colors or mid-tone colors. There's like a few that are leaning towards more on the lighter value side, so it was kind of hard for me to kind of mix and match kind of the colors together, which is why I had the opportunity to work with Magic Fly, and I was able to try out their dual-sided markers, like water-based markers, which has like the brush tip and the dual tip, and they have a good range of colors. And I do like the fact that because it has a fine liner tip, I don't really have to carry an extra pen to do the kind of like final line work on top. And kind of like reasoning on how I approach these kinds of spreads is that I tend to do a whole sketch of the entire spread of whatever I'm trying to draw. It could be characters, it could be landscapes, it could be objects, or whatever you want. Then I'll go ahead and try to pick out colors for the color scheme. And I've done colors from like anywhere between, I think it's technically 2 to 6 colors. I try to limit it so that it doesn't get too busy and I don't become too fixated on coloring things super accurately, like, oh, I need something for the skin tone, I need someone like a color for the eyes, I need something for the hair, you know, like separate different colors. It's just easier if you just have to carry around 2 markers and potentially a pen to do the line work. So in terms of steps, I think I went on a tangent for too long, is that because I'm filling in majority of the spaces with the markers first, it makes it a little bit easier for me to not smudge lines later. So because they're water-based markers, they're gonna reactivate with each other. So for me, I like to fill in as much as I can with kind of just like is what I would consider like my flats for the most part. I don't really do too much like actual shading. I'm just kind of filling in mostly flats. The only thing that has kind of like more like highlights tends to be the eyes and the hair. And then after that, I would pick kind of more of a bolder color that will be kind of my line work color. Or if I'm feeling a little bit more, I don't know, like I just have access to like some kind of pen. This could be like a ballpoint pen, or I like using needlepoint pens, but this paper just doesn't accept the ink of my needlepoint pens as nicely as some other sketchbooks. So I've been kind of avoiding black for the most part, just because me using other colors, let's say like a dark purple or a dark blue, kind of works a little bit better in terms of making the whole spread look a little bit softer. But I think if you're kind of worried about the colors looking very splotchy, like how mine is kind of turning out right now, the pink isn't too bad, but I think it's because it's on the lighter side, and for hair, it doesn't really matter if there's kind of like a directional streaking. But then for like larger areas like the blues, you can see there's a lot of overlap and you can see the streaking quite a bit. But for using, I don't know, any kind of darker color for the line work, because it becomes so bold, I think it kind of works out nicely because it kind of makes your eyes drawn to that a little bit more rather than the flats of your colors looking a little bit too streaky. But I think that's like maybe my personal opinion. So we are moving on to the line work, and I'm just going to show you guys a few snippets here and there of like me working in real time for the line work, just because I think it just helps with the pacing, and you guys know that I am probably taking majority of my time trying to get things looking somewhat correct. I'm still treating these are kind of like more like sketches because I'm not spending a whole great deal amount of time trying to make sure that things look super accurate. But yeah, you can see that I've changed to more of a dark purpley blue rather than the one that was a lot warmer and more red toned, and I thought it just fits the color scheme a little bit better. So the previous purple that I chose for me felt a little bit too warm, especially I find the blue was kind of like a nice kind of like mid-tone blue where it's like it's not too warm, it's not too cool, but with the pink that I chose, I felt like it's too bright and a little bit too cool. So I didn't really want to have warm kind of line work. I kind of wanted the overall spread to have more of a cool tone feel to it. Now I don't think you guys can see super well because of my webcam not being able to capture the colors like 100%, but the pink that I chose is almost highlighter-ish pink, so it's very vibrant and I really liked it because I've been using like a really bright yellow in my sketchbook recently just to fill in some areas, and it depends also on maybe who I was drawing at the time. But the brighter, more kind of saturated colors like this, they tend to not show the streaking as badly as some of the mid-tone or even darker colors, so it kind of works out in my favor a little bit. But I think that's pretty much it in terms of like the process for these. I definitely like doing the line work after so that I don't feel like I'm trying to color in my lines, like filling it in kind of like I was gonna say a sketchbook, but I mean like a coloring book. So I can add as much or little detail as I want, and kind of depends on, you know, how I'm feeling that day. But the kind of like downside a little bit is that if you're planning to make it look super clean, maybe this might not be your best option unless you're very meticulously trying to fill in the shapes properly and you're really taking your sketch I guess seriously. Because for me, I treat my sketch as like just like a base ground, and then when I get into the line work portion, that's when I kind of pull up the reference again, and then I would start to actually look at the objects and try to add the details and stuff and choose whether or not I'm blocking things in super bold, or in this case for any of the dark areas, you can see that I'm doing more of like a kind of like almost a uniform hatching kind of approach, because I didn't really want to fill it in super dark, and if I really wanted to, I could pull out the other end where I could use the brush tip rather than the fine liner tip. So I think in the future, for the sketchbook at least, I might do a little bit more doodling with the markers again, just because like it's kind of fun picking and choosing different color combinations, especially like if you're picking ones for characters or if you have like a specific aesthetic that you want to kind of match. I think it could be fun. I definitely want to look into whether or not I can use some of my fine liners that I like using, or like my needlepoint pens that I like using, because with the super bright colors or even some of like the mid-tone colors, sometimes having like that bold kind of flat of black looks really nice and makes everything kind of just pop a little bit more. And if I'm able to leave kind of a little bit of the white of the paper showing for highlights and stuff, I think it can make things look really fun and a little bit more like graphic looking, but fun nonetheless. So for the sketches, I don't know, for the most part I think it's like kind of like a fun spread of March 7th, but there's definitely some things I kind of wish I didn't do for the spread. So The one that's like, I guess the one I lined the first, I kind of botched up her eyes. So March does have a good kind of like cute eye color, if that makes sense. Her entire aesthetic reminds me of like just carrot colors in general, which I'm already very drawn to because it's pink and blue, and I think that's very cute. But her eyes are like also pink and blue, so it's like pink at the top, blue at the bottom, kind of more in like a gradation-ish kind of way, similar to like, you know, like how Kokomi also has like more of a gradation in her eyes and stuff. But because I botched up March's eyes on the first one, I colored the top half with the dark kind of like purpley blue color, and it just looks kind of off. I think for like the one that I currently did, I think that would have worked better where I just did the upper eye line and then didn't fill in the rest, just because I think it just works with kind of like that derpy eye style where I leave the center of it kind of hollow and white. Because if I did it more like the one I'm working on now, I think it works as long as I keep the upper portion with like a band of highlight, leaving in the pink, because I think that looks a little bit cuter. But for the most part, I kind of just pick and choose, and then also just kind of like feel it out. If I prefer working like, oh, I want to add a little bit more detail, maybe I want to add more thickness variation to, you know, the hair and stuff, because there's some times where I just get very lazy and I don't do that. And then sometimes for certain sketches or doodles, I end up going a little bit more ham, where I start to really try my best to make things look accurate or try to add depth where I can. I like add line weight variation and stuff. But for the most part, it's kind of fun just adding flat colors and then adding line work, or at least for me. Like I said, it's kind of makes it a little bit more of like that bold, punchier feeling. But I guess for me, because I chose kind of the kind of darkish purplish blue, it doesn't make it too punchy, but I think it is dark enough that it reads nicely. Because if I chose more of a mid-tone color that's like too close to either the pink or the blue, I think the lines would have gotten lost too quickly and it would be hard to read anything for the characters, which is kind of why like when I do line work for any of these kinds of sketches, I try my best to add some darker areas with the line work so that we have some kind of like a difference in value, so things don't become too lost, because the lines tend to be a little bit thin and you can't really see them too clearly sometimes because maybe the streakiness of the markers are a little bit too much. But sometimes I don't like picking a color that's too bold in terms of the line work, just because, you know, if I don't pick one that's kind of fits the color scheme 100%, it could kind of take away from the entire sketch or the drawings. Or even like if I don't have that much confidence with the line work, sometimes I might be a little bit more meek with my choices of color. But still, like for the most part, it's still very fun to pick like, you know, maybe 3 colors or even 2 colors and do kind of a spread where you can kind of do like a push and pull of different amounts of certain colors so that you can get a different look. I've been looking at more like other people's spreads in their sketchbooks just because they pop up on Pinterest from time to time, and some people have some really cute spreads of just like 2 colors, but like they're able to maximize the amount of contrast with their color combinations, and I think it looks really nice and it seems very like cohesive. So I think I'm gonna try my best to, you know, experiment a little bit more with my sketchbook and see what kind of sketching methods I like to use for future spreads like this. And when I feel more comfortable, I'll share that process with you guys if I do find anything else that I like to do in terms of sketching. Just like how before I showed you guys like the ballpoint pen method, where I was trying to basically using 2 different ballpoint pens together to get like a different result. You know, it's kind of fun, and just kind of picking and choosing to see what kind of traditional mediums is a little bit easier for me to carry in my sketchbook, because, or not in my sketchbook, in my pencil case, because I would like to sketch a little bit more when I'm on the go. But usually I opt to either just take my phone and don't worry about drawing, or sometimes I just opt to take my iPad. But, you know, there's like some days I want to do more traditional artwork. And then last but not least, I added the little swatches to the top right hand corner just because I would like to keep record of it potentially for a future spread of March. And that's kind of like the overall look of the spread. And I think it looks really cute with the pink and the blue. Maybe it's just because my bias of carrot colors kind of pop out, and I think these color caps together look really cute together anyways. So hopefully you guys enjoyed today's sketchbook session, and I'll talk to you guys next time in the next video. Bye!